back to round two of argumentative writing, the research essay here for English 401 at University of New Hampshire. Hi, I'm Jess Flaherty, again, your instructor. So I just talked about the different steps that you need to go through to build your argument and the different kind of claims that you can make. So now I'm going to show you how to build your case using kind of two different main strategies, and then also what you have for conclusions options. Okay, there's like three main types of conclusions that you can make. We'll talk about those as well. So let's first talk about how to build your case. Okay, remember right now you're doing your research. You have 5 different sources minimum you need to find, right? An internet source, 2 academic sources, use the University of New Hampshire website for those, or talk to Ben Peck. Then you need to have a field-based research or an interview of some kind of an expert. And then finally, hopefully you can find an ebook or a longer work of some time. The writer's presence also you can use. So using all of those sources that you've gathered, and this is where it's tough because I would recommend you print them out and then use a highlighter to find that information. If you have that capability and you have a printer at home, great. Absolutely do it. Otherwise, make sure you just save those tabs and you have those ready to go. And I would honestly have a journal right next to you where you are handwriting out the different sites and things you want to reference. Because there are 3 different main citing strategies that you can use to help build your case. Okay, first is to cite experts of authority, right? Ethos. So this is somebody who has written a best-selling, or not even a best-selling, but even better, like either an award-winning or an acclaimed book, okay? Make sure you verify whoever this is, right? Make sure they have the right ethos, okay? And you are using your same strategies for your rhetorical analysis essay here. You don't want to make a claim from someone who says they have authority, but really they don't. But you can absolutely use their either the studies that they've done or their own like testimony to help build your case. Somebody says, I'm an expert on this. I have a PhD in law from the University of Chicago or whatever. They're an expert. You can cite them to help build your case. Right? These are the 3 different citing strategies. You can also use examples. So this is any hard evidence from the real world. That is a study that was done, right? That is some kind of statistical analysis that is done, and really we'd cite that as a different category. Statistics are a little bit different than like regular hard evidence. You don't want to have too much of one or the other, right? So this might be, some kind of other study that was done that's not necessarily a statistic. You don't want to rely too much on just statistics or too much just on experts. You want to try to blend these 3 things all together, all right? Once you've got all of your evidence, like the hard evidence, then you're going to start possibly using an analogy, right? This is where you are having to just come up with a different way to describe something. So I remember my student who wrote about bees talked about imagine a world where you wouldn't have almonds, because bees are like a really necessary part of almond farming, and so she had some analogies to different kind of foods that we wouldn't have if we didn't have bees, right? And that's an example of like making her argument stronger, because that's an argument to pathos. We all like food. Another strategy you can use here are anecdotes. Anecdotes are fine for pathos. I would put them later in your paper, depending on what your subject is. And you got to remember, for one side of an anecdote, there's almost always a counter anecdote. So if you want to write about how student athletes should be paid for college sports, there is, for every student who says, I've been taken advantage of by not being paid, there's another example of a student somehow something bad happens because they were paid. They fall back behind on their studies, or they've taken a bribe, or something's happened, right? So there's anecdotes and there's counter anecdotes. So consider that when you're using these. You may even want to reference one of the counter anecdotes and then explain why it's not relevant. Okay. And it's also okay to use your own personal experience for this paper, right? Do you consider your place in society? You are a college student. You are given certain kinds of expertise because of that, and also you're sort of like going to be looked at as not an expert in other categories. But depending on what experience you've had with this subject, for example, if you're writing again about how using technology influences toddlers, and you've seen a younger sibling or a younger cousin or something have some very strange behavior because they've been addicted to a tablet, then that is great personal experience that you can weave in to your essay. That is absolutely okay to use. Finally, just be ready for those objections, anticipate objections, and be ready with counter arguments. You're going to want to address them, and unless they're really, like, if you have no way to address a counter argument, like for example, let's go back to we should lower the drinking age to 18. One of the counter arguments is that there's going to be a lot more young people who are drinking and driving, and it's going to lead to more accidents. And you could say, oh, yeah, but we have ride shares today, right? And maybe people wouldn't do that. But if you make alcohol more readily available, people are going to drink it more often, and it's really hard to refute. So in some cases, you can partially refute it with the example of the rideshare apps, but then you just want to ignore it because you can't have a perfect argument, right? Yeah, hopefully the rhetorical analysis showed you that you can make your argument really strong, but it can never quite be perfect. Okay, so do all of these different things to build your case, right? You're citing different information, and you're using your own anecdotes and analogies and things. You're gonna want to again have a little bit of a weave going on here, right? You don't want to just have information. You want to make it a little more readable than that by doing these bottom steps and the top steps, and in a mixture, right? When you get to your conclusions, there are 3 different kinds of conclusions that you can make. The first one is probably the most popular, and that is the call to action. That's where at the very end of your paper you have that last paragraph. Again, this is related to the so what category. What is your call to action? What do we need to do? What does our society need to do? What does the individual need to do? What does the state need to do? You call someone to act, and either that's their reader who is reading your paper, which is going to be me or your classmates, or it could be a politician or someone who has got more power than the individual. You can also issue a warning. If we don't do X, Y, Z in X, Y, Z years, something really bad is going to happen. I'm fairly certain this is how I ended my paper on nuclear waste disposal. So listen, if we don't do anything, this nuclear waste is going to be sitting around, and it's a problem that's not going to go away. It's only going to get worse. So I issued a warning to my reader, that we need to do something, or things will continue to be bad. And the final one you can have is to end with a question or a series of questions. For example, if you're doing something on genetic engineering of children, do you want to live in a society where everyone is perfect? Ooh, that's an interesting question because then there's no disease, but then we start losing some sort of like variance or variety. Be careful with this one because sometimes it can make your ending be a little too prompt. You can all of a sudden just be like, the end. That's why I recommend multiple questions, and it's absolutely okay to ask a question, answer it, and then ask another question, and then answer it, and then ask like another question that then you don't answer, and it's up to the reader to interpret. I do recommend using questions in any of this. You can pose it to your reader, and it leaves them a little bit to think about, but again, it's not something you want to do too often. Probably like exclamation points. You have about 3 different exclamation points for your whole paper, and I would say you have 3 to 5 questions that you can ask them. Maybe more. Depends on what your subject is. All right, so that's it for today. We'll see you on Thursday for our first workshop. Try to have 1 page ready. Also, post online to the same discussion board we just had. Update your initial question and respond to your own post with your final research question. So, what is your final research question going into this paper? All right, thanks. We'll see you Thursday. And goodbye, Internet. Doop.